What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk to you about NIO. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility in the stock price, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So looking forward into this upcoming week for data points, tonight is going to be a very big deal. So we have inflation year over year and month over month. So year over year forecast is negative 0.2, month over month is flat. We also have PPI and balance of trade. So when it comes down to all of this, I feel like it might be seen as neutral. So inflation, obviously, I think the trend has been significantly going lower, so it is fair to assume that is going to continue. Balance of trade might be a little bit more of a sticky one, only because of what we recently did see with Trump and the states, their recent balance of trade. Even though it was for April, it did signal a significant reduction of imports. So when it comes down to this data, nonetheless, it's going to be able to really move Chinese stocks. And hopefully everything comes according to plan and really pushing NIO and, like I said, other Chinese stocks higher. Companies unveiling their earnings, nothing really crazy that will move NIO or the broader market. Nothing specific to NIO whatsoever. One thing that could help though is Trump and China. And you also have to realize going into this week, Trump is going to try to save face because he's been seen as the guy that's just arguing with Elon right now. It's very childish. So he's going to want to save himself. And there is that discussion between China and the States occurring on the 9th. So tomorrow, that should be a pretty good catalyst. And if everything goes according to plan, then you should see a very nice bump up in the stock price. So again, that's basically the catalyst for this upcoming week. The only other thing that kind of came out that you might see more talking on is expansion. So latest from Europe, it does show that NIO sold 58 vehicles across 5 markets, all significantly lower year over year. So Norway is down negative 56%, Germany 37%, Netherlands 75%, and Sweden down 89%. That's anticipated, but even from their recent earnings, like they still want to expand. So I didn't realize when they kind of flip-flopped a little bit. So at the end of the day, this you might see a little bit more chatter essentially on this, but it's kind of crazy that they're wanting to do this when they just laid off a lot of individuals in many of the regions that they want to expand, and that would directly impact their earnings per share going forward. So it is interesting because NIO, for their last earnings, they did flop on their key metrics. So earnings per share and revenue did miss. Future guidance obviously was a saving grace for NIO, but nonetheless, it's interesting to see NIO's mentality. And I think because of just all this expansion and everything, this is why you haven't seen the most optimistic analyst rating. So last couple, 350, 3, and whatever else, you might see one analyst rating this upcoming week, but I feel like for an analyst to wait like a week and a half for their earnings, it's just not really feasible. So you might see possibly one, only because like there's these two. So CMB and also JP Morgan, they might give some ratings, but I think everyone else other than that has essentially just said their piece and for the most part given up on NIO, or at least reviewing it in my opinion. But aside from all of that though, you do have going into this week, 13.68% of the free floats being shorted, works out to be 211 million shares overall are being shorted. So anticipate shorts to be fairly active as what they have been. Even on Friday, they did increase 923,000 shares. Cost to borrow minimum is negative, so negative 0.2, meaning that there is brokers out there physically paying people to short NIO. And I did a video yesterday, top 5 EVs based on analysts kind of ratings and stuff like that. I did not realize that there was that many EVs that you had this type of scenario occurring. So yeah, there's a lot of manipulation in the EV market, but obviously I don't need to tell you that. Any NIO investor that's been in it for like 2 weeks knows that there's manipulation. But looking at the open interest with it closing at ultimately it was 363. So the 350 and below strike prices are considered in their money. So 13,000 at the 350, 2,000 at that 3. So essentially 1.5 million shares equivalent. So market makers might have to cover some of that come Monday, so you might see a little bit of a bump up, but there was some abnormal transactions that did occur after hours on Friday on the dark pool, and based on the timestamp, it was the same entity, 1.84 million and then 1.57 million. So when it comes down to that might be market makers just covering some of those in the money options. But looking forward into this upcoming week though, you have 4,000 at that 350, 15,000 at that 4, 7,000 at that 450, and then 4,000 at that 5. So if NIO does start to build up some good momentum, roughly around that $4 range, you could potentially see shorts wake up again. So something just to kind of keep in mind. With it at 363, it is trading between this pivot and this S1. 349 is going to be a strong support. 380 or 378 is going to be the next strong target / resistance. So just watch for those support and resistance points. And below that 349 though is 331. So we know that for sure is that diamond support. That's what it did bounce off of from their kind of earnings sell-off. But aside from all that fun stuff though, on the actual chart itself going into this week, you have right now 377 being that 50-day moving average. That is a very big deal for NIO. Every time it does break above that, usually results in, as long as it stays above it for 2 consecutive days, as a little fun disclaimer, it usually does result in like a 30% swing. So that's going to be at least something to watch for, most likely this week, because it did attempt on the 4th. It unfortunately failed, largely because of shorts kind of tripling down, but there's a little bit of consolidation that did occur over the last couple of days. So most likely this upcoming week, we will see a retest of that. And again, if everything goes according to plan, you could really see a nice push higher. This 100-day moving average at 408 and then the 200 at 456. So at the end of the day, I think NIO will ultimately move a little bit higher, only because of the optimism associated to a states China deal. And this might be just icing on the cake, these data points. So we'll just have to kind of wait and see how things play out. But I'm cautiously optimistic going into this upcoming week for NIO. So let me know your viewpoint. Do you agree? Do you think that this week is going to be bearish? What's your 2 cents? Hopefully everyone's having a good weekend. And then one final thing, if you are looking for some good buy signals, pop over to my Patreon and get buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point. Definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that, appreciate all of you watching.